We live in the most sexually saturated civilization in human history, but somehow everyone is miserable about sex. Adult content is everywhere, mixed in with normal entertainment. Dating apps with hookup promises commodify dating into an algorithmic meat market. But at the same time, public spaces have never been more frigid and sterile, and there's a looming threat of an off-color comment or weird interaction destroying your career. That's the structure of modern life, a weird cognitive dissonance that everyone feels but no one can pin down. But it turns out this isn't actually new. Freud identified this divide a century ago and called it the Madonna whore complex, a psychic split where desire and respect are mutually exclusive, where a man can't conjure lust for his wife and can't conjure love for a mistress. But today, this problem is not relegated to neurotics. The structure of modern society itself forces nearly everyone to have a Madonna whore complex. Freud identified that when sexuality, male sexuality, is suppressed, it doesn't actually go away, but instead splits. When this happens to a man, he's unable to love a woman that he desires sexually and unable to sexually desire a woman that he loves. This leads to failed relationships, cheating, sexual dysfunction, and a lot of the gender war relationship issues we see today. Freud identified this as a failure of the two natural sides of love to combine in a healthy way. He called these two faces the affection current and the sensual current, respectively. The affection current of love is what you feel for your family, and especially your mother. This is the Madonna, and despite what Freud says, I would characterize this as pure, sacred love. On the other side, you have the sensual current, symbolized by the whore. This is the side of love that emerges in puberty and can be simplified to animal lust or profane love. In a healthy person, these two currents come together in one woman, a wife. You feel the pure, protective, courtly love as you devote your life to her, but you still go gorilla mode in the bedroom. But for someone afflicted with the Madonna whore complex, these two strains are incompatible. This results in failure in the bedroom with the partner that the patient actually loves. Normal function can only be achieved with a partner that is debased and objectified. This can be summed up by Freud's famous quote that where these men love, they cannot desire, and where they desire, they cannot love. In the cases of Freud's patients, the symptomology of this complex was erectile dysfunction with the patient's wife, but with full desire for the act. Instead, these men would seek out lower-class partners outside of their social circle, mistresses or harlots, with which they could enjoy the full debauched pleasure of the carnal act. But the complex was present even outside of these neurotic patients. Freud claims that most of society, even at his time, was afflicted by a minor version of the complex. He believes civilization itself, by restraining man from his animal impulses, means he cannot act out his most base desires with a socially acceptable partner. If he wishes to fulfill his sexual fantasies in full animal depravity, a civilized man must seek out a debased woman to act them out with. But societal progress didn't stop in 1922. Since Freud's essay 100 years ago, we've mandated the Madonna whore complex by law. Modern norms, policies, and laws have institutionalized the Madonna archetype as the only acceptable way of treating women in a polite society. Policies enforcing standardized workplace cultures have banished masculinity from the economy. Over 76% of human resource managers are female, placing behavioral adjudication and punishment in the hands of the dominating mother. Men are stuck in a catch-22 where masculine behavior gets them punished for being toxic, but feminine behavior makes them perceived as weak and incompetent. The specter of harassment liability haunts many men's psyche, with nearly 1 in 3 young men worried they've done something that could be perceived as harassment. Based on their ability to accuse and judge, women assume the role of moral arbiter and have asymmetric power over men. Men must treat all women as the chaste, sacred Madonna in order to avoid a social faux pas that can be magnified into a life-ruining mistake. This forces the sensual current deep under the surface and pathologizes it. A man unwilling to form his personality to this misshapen mold is a barbarian unfit to inhabit polite society. Normal male urges are propagandized as savage in the best case and evil at worst. While this culture eliminates some of the worst offenders, it makes normal men afraid to inhabit half of healthy sexuality. Women suffer because of this behavior as well, being on the receiving end of this unsettling eunuch deference and castrated professional courtesy, and it only increases the fear and prevalence of creepy behavior. But the sensual current didn't actually disappear. The pressure is just forced to release in a stranger, darker way. When you think of the debased archetype in modern day, you might conjure the image of a club girl on a manosphere podcast, an adult actress, or an Instagram model surreptitiously peddling a spicy link. And all these types share one thing in common. They exist digitally. The sensual current has been banished from polite society entirely to the digital realm. Any man can engage in the most graphic, overstimulating debasement of sexual objects, just like Freud describes, but solely in the digital plane. Online sex workers are of a separate, lower caste from the professional man, and the shame of marrying a girl with an OnlyFans is a manosphere staple. From the Madonna whore complex perspective, adult content is particularly pernicious. A normal person would never fulfill the fantasies they engage in with adult content in real life. The mediation of the screen alleviates the primal realities of these debased acts by stripping away the disgust of smells, sounds, and sensations that would be unpleasant, even were you to fulfill the fantasy with an IRL partner. This stimulates and increases the amount of fantasies that are unfulfilled in a healthy confluence of the sensual and affection currents, creating greater dysfunction. Also, because this is all digital, the social cost is massively decreased. Compare adult content use to knowing someone frequents ladies of the night. Even socially acceptable outlets for the sensual current only exist online. The main IRL way we engage with relationships is first mediated by dating apps. Relationships are no longer created in shared social contexts like friend groups, education, or workplaces. People are now matched at near random, sorted by base mutual impulse. This presents an unusual opportunity for engaging debased partners like Freud describes, but again, without social cost. This further stimulates the sensual current and separates it from the affection current. And the further the gap, the less likely the woman will be treated well too. There are obvious exceptions to this digital mediation, but if you go looking for a harlot in real life, they are much rarer than the inundation of sensuality we experience online. If you've seen my other videos, you know that there is not much of a difference between IRL experience and what we see on the screen. Our sensual current is constantly stimulated digitally, while our affection current is constantly warped and separated. The gap that Freud outlines as causing the dysfunction is structurally enforced on both sides. The effects of this problem are already apparent. Gender discourse, mass inceldom, young male psychological impotence, men and women hating each other. Men have spent the past half-century confronting masculinity's shadow through a series of cultural reckonings at the behest of women. Women, on the other hand, have only become emboldened to treat us as dysfunctional, hated remnants of a barbaric past. While it would be satisfying if women went through a similar, purifying confrontation with their shadow, it's important to remember that the gender war problem is structural. If we unravel the offending laws, incentives, and social structures, then put new ones in place, women will adjust to fit them. But for you, the individual man suffering under this yoke, what answer is there? Well, avoid digital stimulation of your sensual current, probably figure out how to be self-employed, and try to come to terms that even though you're the most red-pilled, manosphere, MAGA-cocked ultra-chud the world has ever reckoned with, that you actually like women just a little bit.